Hi, everyone. It's now 2 o'clock, so I will start. My name is A1 E. I'm the director of Emily A. Wallace Gallery at SUNY College at Old Westbury. This public program, David B. Smith's World Building Workshop, supported by the School of Arts and Sciences, by Emily A. Wallace Gallery at SUNY Westbury, is done in conjunction with our virtual exhibition, Another World, Textile Art of David B. Smith, which documents the past 7 years of Smith's practice of using photographs and textile-based wall works and narratives. Our program today will first explore the virtual exhibition of Smith's photo textile works, which he has been developing since 2013. Actually, he will be also introducing his early work before that. And shown chronologically are the large-scale wall hangings, huge sculptures, a jacket, and many other works. After the exhibition walkthrough, we invite all of you to develop your own world-building practice in this all-level workshop in improvisational storytelling and the mechanics of the imagination. You will need paper, 2 sheets of a paper at least, and a pen or any writing implements, and pair of scissors. I have mine here. Okay, great. Let me formally introduce David B. Smith. Smith holds an MFA from Bard College. He has been awarded a New York NYC NIFA Fellowship in Craft Sculpture category, an Apex Art International Fellowship in New Zealand, and residencies by Socrates Sculpture Park, Textiles Art Center, and Institute for Electronic Arts, New York. Smith's work has appeared at MoMA PS1, the International Center of Photography, Asia Song Society, and 56 Henry Gallery. Recent solo exhibitions were presented at Halsey McKay Gallery, the Spring Art Show, LMAC Gallery, and Ackerd Art Gallery in Millersville University. His work has been discussed in the New York Times, the Observer, Art Fact City, the Washington Post, and Miami New Times. Has a connection to SUNY Old Westbury when he worked as an adjunct professor in visual art department from 2009 to 2000. To have him back with us. So let's welcome David B. Smith.
Thank you, Haiwan. I hope that I hope you guys can hear me clearly. There's not too much feedback or noise. But that was a really nice introduction, and it's just so nice to be working with you and with Old Westbury and the community there. As you said, I did teach there for a few years, and it really it was like one of the best experiences I've had being an artist, being able to learn from the students there and my fellow faculty, and I'm just so happy to have this virtual exhibition being hosted at the Wallace Gallery and to be here with you guys today, and thank you for coming. And just so you know what we're going to do today, it's kind of a combination of a little artist talk combined with sort of an abbreviated, what I call world building workshop, which is obviously kind of unspecific, but it's sort of about learning to practicing using our imaginations, spontaneous storytelling, and just playing within sort of a constrained set of rules that I'll lay out for you. So before I do a quick introduction of who I am and my work and give you a little walkthrough of the virtual exhibition, just so you know, after I'm done with that walkthrough, we'll move into the workshop section, which you will, as Heywan mentioned, need a couple pieces of paper, scissors, and a pen or pencil. And then you also would be ideal to have like a flat surface in front of your computer, like maybe a couple feet square. A couple feet, rectangle, so that you can work, because we're going to be just working directly down on the table. So a little bit about me first, because I think it's important to kind of share where I'm coming from, how I got to this place, and how I think of myself. My name is David Benjamin Smith. I'm a third generation immigrant of Ashkenazi Jewish descent. My grandparents and great grandparents are Jews from Eastern Europe. Well, some of them. Some of them were their parents. And I was born in Washington, D.C. My mother worked in publishing and writing, and my father was a lawyer and art collector and curator. His father was a textile designer and producer, and his wife made utilitarian crafts and artistic decorations. My mother's mother was a music teacher and also practiced home crafts, many of which she taught me growing up. As I was growing up, I was drawn to visual arts, music, architecture, as a way of expressing and communicating things beyond words, which I sometimes had trouble with growing up. I thought about going to architecture school, as I loved the way spaces can reflect and support those that inhabit them. But I had the privilege of choosing to get a liberal arts degree and to learn about many things without knowing exactly what to do with that knowledge. After college, I spent 8 years in New York City working at galleries and for artists in various ways, including photographing their work. I went to graduate school for photography and afterward began teaching at SUNY Old Westbury, and at the same time began to work with this photo sculpture method, which this show is documenting. Building a simple, intuitive process of collage and a language of fabric transformation, inspired by my time there teaching Introduction to Creative Thinking, Design, Photography, Color, and Community Engagement. I now live in Lenape-Hocking, also known as Brooklyn, and have been working on this photo textile sculpture practice for the last 8 years. I see myself as a part of a community of artists, family, friends, neighbors, collaborators that are diverse in their identities and ways of living, thinking, and being. And I also see myself in a family line of makers, creators, healers, and survivors, and I see my work as a way of reflecting where I came from, where and with, and who I am with, and what I am working toward in the world. I see my work as a way of envisioning possibilities and a place for people to discuss and take responsibility for imagining and building toward our common reality. So with all of that kind of my background laid out, I'm going to give you a little introduction to where I'm coming from, and then into like work before the work that's included in the online exhibition, and then I'll do a little walkthrough of the exhibition itself. And if you have any questions about this part, just make a note of it or perhaps write it in the chat. But and then after I'm done with the walkthrough, maybe I can answer a couple of them before we move into the workshop. So I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, so looks like my screen is now being shared. So this was I was just going to go over a few works that showed how I got to working with what I call some. It's sort of between something between photo textiles and photo sculpture. Um, but as Haywan pointed out, one of the nice things about my work is that, or for me, is that I can move with this technique between many different media. Flat wall works, three-dimensional sculptures, wearables, installation, but it all kind of begins with fabric. But before I got to fabric, I was printing a lot on paper and making digital collages. For example, this piece is called Pentagon Snowflake, and it's from around 2009. Um, and it's actually a digital collage of a picture of the Pentagon, an aerial picture of the Pentagon. So it kind of shows some of my what I call conceptual collage technique, which is taking a photograph of something and then manipulating it uh, into patterns or playing with it so that the meaning of the original photograph is sort of takes on some of the properties of the form of how I manipulate it. I don't know if you can tell that it's kind of a weird picture. If you've never seen the Pentagon from above, um, you wouldn't really know what it looks like, but it's essentially one of those tiny little pentagons. And then I've sort of tiled that same image over and over again to create this pattern, which is then built up into this larger snowflake. Um, and during, after graduate school, I sort of moved into embracing the manipulation of the materials of presentation of art itself, rather than putting, cultural um, content into the work and manipulating it. I actually started to manipulate things like frames. Um, so as I was working as an art handler at the time in a New York gallery, I had access to these kind of leftover frames, and I would cut them up and make sculptures out of them, kind of exploring that space between the two-dimensional and the three-dimensional, and also thinking about surfaces that were meant to be seen, surfaces that were meant for support, um, also uh, aspects of the artwork that connote value and focus of attention, and sort of playing with that and thinking about how I could call that into question. Um, the piece on the left is a sculpture made out of 3 canvases that I found in my studio hallway. Um, I took the 3 canvases and I made several sculptures out of them and photographed them. And then with each of the photographs, I made another piece based on the original photograph. So in this case, I made a new canvas based on the shape of the sculpture, which was made from 3 to 2 dimensions, and then I stretched linen over the canvas. So this is kind of to demonstrate my transition from photography to textiles, and also some of the reasons why I did that. In this case, this is a room made of blank canvases. On the bottom image, you can see the canvas part, and on the top image, you see the wooden stretchers, which I've added color to kind of draw attention to and to create a tension between 2 and 3 dimensions. As you can see, those cube shapes sort of popping into relief. And I also hosted performance series within this. And then after that, I had all these blank canvases, and I started to cut them and to make sort of wall sculpture pieces out of the canvases. So even though at that time I didn't know that that textiles was the way forward for me, I had sort of intuitively was leaning into the textile, the support of painting, which I found all around me being an artist. And much of my work is also based on process, and in this case, I sort of processes to generate abstraction through kind of a conceptual process. So in this case, I put like dabs of paint on this wooden kind of hinged book and then pushed them closed to create kind of a Rorschach effect. Um, and I liked the idea that each time I did this, it would generate a totally different image. And there was no way to actually reproduce the same image. So it's that kind of letting go of control and um, that I'm interested in the work in terms of generating a sort of a almost like a code or a process that I can feed content into and that will spit out something that I didn't expect, which actually goes back to my experience as a black and white photographer working in the darkroom. But in this case, I thought, well, let me go full circle and get away from abstraction and start to think more about my own childhood, my own formative experiences, and things, thinking about imagery and stories that I was exposed to as a kid growing up and that I sort of took for granted, but that um, maybe I could go back and sort of alter or manipulate or play with my own memories. So in this case, this is a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. Um, and I made this series of all four of them with the different colored headbands. Obviously, it's abstracted, so you may or may not see it, but that's kind of what I'm going for in a lot of my work is starting with something that's familiar and playing with it and transforming it until it becomes unfamiliar. Um, this was the first piece that led to my textile practice. Does anyone recognize it? I
Tetris.
see a couple nods.
Is it Pac-Man? Like the Pac-Man?
Well, it's referencing the Pac-Man, but if you kind of zoom back a bit, maybe step away from your computer.
Is it Mario?
That's right. Yes. So Mario for me was sort of like the kind of like prototypical like early cartoon character that I feel like just comes to mind when I think of something I liked as a kid. So that was kind of a natural place to start with my textile work. So I had this image and I was thinking, well, what do I do with it? I like it, but do I print it on paper? Do I project it? Do I make a color by number kind of thing? And I didn't know what to do. And I thought, well, this is my chance to make the leap and to actually make a textile. And I saw at the time I saw a picture of a cat. My friend had a picture like a blanket with a picture of her cat on her couch, and her cat had passed away. And when I asked her about this blanket, I said, "What is this blanket?" And you could just see in her disposition that she cared so much about this blanket because it reminded her of her cat and of this memory and of this time in her life. And I thought, I had this light bulb go off. I want to make photography that's like that you can touch, that you can fold, that you can wrap yourself within the image itself, and you can have an intimate relationship with the image, both me as the creator, but also as the receiver, which is the viewer. So I just really leaned into this idea, and that's what this whole show is about. So I think you can see this too. So so the show is I'll probably just go for about 10 more minutes, maybe less, so we can have a couple questions. But this is an online exhibition hosted by Haywan and the Amelie Wallace Gallery. And it was originally conceived of as a show to be seen in person, but as the pandemic began to loom, and the show began to be on the schedule, and questions of whether the galleries would be open. This actually was at another gallery first. We made an online version. So I would invite you all in your own time to peruse this, because there's a lot here, but I'd like to just explain the basic idea and maybe touch on a few basic pieces. So there are 20 pieces in the exhibition, starting with the first piece of Mario here on the upper left. And then it goes chronologically through until this piece on the bottom middle, which is a 2020, one of the last pieces I made when this show was first installed. And this was actually in April of 2020. It was the first public work I made during the pandemic in New York. And the idea of the show is that it kind of shows an evolution and a building out of a language of phototextile sculpture from the first image being a JPEG, or a digital image, being woven by a jacquard loom into a blanket, to the next image, for example. Well, let me just go over the whole idea first before I go in, and where you can see some elements are stuffed, mirrored. I started to cut the jacquard textiles, fold them, sew them, embroider into them, paint on them, stuff them, build wooden supports for them, also make them into utilitarian objects which could be used for workshops and meditation sessions. As I said, I embroidered. I had the opportunity to work do a piece at Socrates Sculpture Park. So I took the idea of fabric, and instead of using fabric, I used billboards. I made figurative works, clothing, and in this last case, a public sculpture made out of shower curtains, which I designed. So let me just touch on a couple specifically. There are 10 images of each work. So with the idea that the first image is all taken from the same distance, so you get a sense of the scale. And then subsequent images focusing on different angles, details. And even the backs of many of the pieces. Along with each image, each work, there's often an audio guide. This was originally designed to be used in the space itself, to be able to kind of have me there, like telling you something about each work while you look at it. And then I also kind of wrote that out like an abbreviated version. And because this work was designed to be shown at a university, and also because I really like my work to try to be interactive and invite people to engage, I created activities for many or most of the pieces that relate to the work. So for example, in this work, there's a lot of abstraction here. You may not know what you're looking at, but I sort of reveal that here through my process and my concept. After my father died, I found a box of vintage lunch boxes in a storage unit. I photographed 2 lunch boxes and manipulated the image digitally and physically. I layered the textile images together, adding stuffing and stretching them onto wood. Concept. I manipulated my own memory of these lunch boxes by interweaving and layering the 2 images together. Through this piece, I found a way to collaborate with my father to create an image evoking the past and also the uncertain future, moving through loss and my own fragmented and changing identity. So then I have an activity that kind of works with those themes where I ask you to think about an object that maybe you and your parents share in some way. Maybe how does that object relate to the broader culture? Was there something that you might want to do with the object and your parent wouldn't? So I'm kind of bringing you into my own thinking and also seeing if maybe there are some parts of yourself that you could look at through looking at my work. And let's zoom out. As I said, these are all in chronological order, so you see the development. I'll just go over a couple more. I guess we can jump ahead to this one because this was a key moment for my work where I not only realized I could cut, sew, and stuff the flat photo textiles to make photo sculptures, but then I could actually make multiple photo sculptures that could be interwoven together to create whatever you wanted, whatever you could imagine. So I really like this idea of open-ended ideation, open-ended experimentation, improvisation, spontaneous composition, and the kind of the feeling that I get when I manipulate these sculptures together. It's sort of one of freedom, of empowerment, creativity, and also sharing my inner feelings as I manipulate them. And let's do one or two more. So as I said, well, this is kind of interesting. Because my work is photo based, in other words, I take a photograph and I have it turned into a textile, which I then manipulate. It really leads itself to this idea of recursion. I don't know if you guys know what that means, but basically it's when and I don't know if I know what it means, but what I'm bringing it up to explain is that I can take a photo of something, make it into a textile, as evidenced here on the left, small, and could take a photograph of that and make that into a textile, which was blown up in this case. And then I could add layers to that. So it's this kind of layering and echoing and looping of time, space, and of my activities and my seeing in the process that I'm interested in, because it can really refer to a lot of things. Memory, it can also refer to the creative process, to layering, to looping and building, and even of letting go, and sort of the natural processes of history and biology and time. So this was the original one, which I then took a picture of and had it blown up and then went back into. So in order to fit in the workshop, we will only really have time for that's probably good. But I think it might be best to use these few moments. I'll leave this up maybe because, well, actually, yeah, I can't really see if anyone has questions, but does anyone have any questions?
Just to simple question, how do you transfer photographic images onto a textile? How do you do that?
Yes. Well, there are so many ways to do it. And I originally started with this first image using, it's called photoweavers.com. And it's really exciting because anybody can just upload any JPEG. And pay for it, and then you'll get a blanket in the mail. And it's kind of cool because there are only like, I think 6 colors of threads, and then black and white. So you're gonna kind of get a surprise of from what you sent in to what you get back. And the other cool thing is that on the backs of these, um, you have a reverse image, because this is the back, because the threads that they needs to show to create the colors, the other threads get hidden, and so you have kind of almost a negative, which sort of brings it back to this photo aspect. And what's actually really exciting about this text weaving image is that the way I see it, it's almost like an emulation of, or a little literal reproduction of like pixels on a computer screen. And when I manipulate this kind of material, I feel almost like I'm touching pixels and cutting through them, and it's a really cool sensation. And then recently I've branched out. I did the Alfred Institute of Electronic Arts residency at Alfred University, and they have all kinds of ways of outputting imagery onto fabric, such as dye sublimation. You can just inkjet print onto fabric. You can transfer, like iron transfer, dye transfer. Um, you know, thinking of Rauschenberg and people like that. You can screen print onto fabric. Really, that's part of the fun, to think, how could I possibly do this? Any other questions? Are
Um,
there any
John
in the
has
chat
a
or anything?
question in the chat.
Yeah.
Interested to see more of the images you use in stuffed works and the sources.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that question. I can quickly point to a few here. This one is, so as you're noting, or you're hinting at, the sources sort of become abstracted. This right here is one of the lunchbox images. It's a picture of some sort of like policeman's legs, and he's helping a little injured deer or fawn in the lunchbox. This is a Joshua tree. It's from a photograph I took when I went on a trip to the desert. And this is a case of a picture I took of the California coast, but then I overlaid a hexagonal pattern on top of it from another source material. So sometimes it's just straight photographs, sometimes it's manipulated in Photoshop. It could be things from YouTube. In this case, this is we were talking about sculptures, but I was just going to show you one more. Oh yeah, these, like, this is kind of funny. Like, this is my friend here making a face, sort of screaming, like a scary face. So it's interesting because I could really relate to anything you wanted to, but I think of it a lot like memory. Like, the image itself is like the memory information that's encoded somewhere in our mind, but it's sort of only partial, and it needs to be reconstructed each time we have a memory. Each time we tell the story of a memory, we have to literally construct it from fragments, most of which we've are based on other fragments that we've constructed in the past. So a lot of times, like, I'll totally forget what something is from, and someone will say, what is that from? And I'll just say, I don't know. And that, to me, that's interesting, because like, a lot of times people want to create meaning and know the meaning of things, but other times the meaning isn't there anymore, and you have to kind of make up a new meaning. So this one here is actually a picture of a sculpture made out of slinkies that I made, this black and white, this texture. Any other questions? before we start our workshop? Wish Catherine was here. She would have lots of
Mm.
questions.
Student.
Oh, yeah.
Question. So to that point, then, do you have a consistent library of images you're working with? You talk about having these lunch boxes. You talk about the pictures of your friends. Do you find yourself using the same images over and over again, or are you constantly kind of adding to that library of work?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm always adding to it. It's sort of like that that part of it is kind of the I would say part of the entropic aspect of my work is that I don't like categorize my source or give a hierarchy to my source imagery, meaning it could be it could be something I did today, it could be something I did 10 years ago. I like to see how different types of images relate to each other. And so by leaving that aspect up to chance and up to intuition, I like to create more of chance for random encounters between imagery. Oh, there's something else I was going to say about that, but oh yeah, the other thing I was going to say, the one of the aspects which I didn't completely touch on is the reason why this show is called Another World is because I sort of see my work as me sort of projecting, taking in my reality and projecting out another reality. So almost like a parallel world or like another parallel dimension. So what I find kind of comforting and generative in my work is that anything I choose to make, there's no reason it couldn't exist in this other world, because there's an infinite number of things that could exist in this other world. So by creating another world, and then it's almost like I'm learning about what's in this other world by making it. And if I were to try to control what those things were too much, then I feel like I would be dictating what was in that other world too strictly. So yeah, but thank you for that question. Any others?
There's another question from John Day. What is the link between your art and social change?
Ah, good question. Thank you. I feel like there are different ways into that question, but mostly it's about for me about envisioning, like exercising the imagination, exercising an understanding that each person can have an idea that with persistence and patience can be instituted into our reality and can be, you know, added to what we see around us. I think there's a large culture and a large message of in our society of we are the subject, we are the thing that is being, you know, we're sold something or told, you know, what is good, what is bad, or we are meant to be the audience of other people's stories. And my work is, I hope, aiming to encourage kind of a deeper awareness of how things are constructed, the processes of how things become how they are. I know it's sort of like a big, seemingly huge undertaking, but my point is that I start with the very fundamental aspect of cutting, pasting, um, stuffing, sewing, things that anybody could theoretically do. And I find it very satisfying to then create new narratives that are coming from me. And it's easier said than done, to be honest, to create your own story. So even just creating a little story for me is a big deal. So I hope that makes sense. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
So what I find it really interesting in your work is this combination between the use of mechanical industrial process, such as photographic process, and also having the photoweaves.com, doing that textile process. And then you're also mixing in with very labor intensive, craft oriented, like processes such as like sewing and stuffing and cutting, and like these are process of craft. So what is your take on like a mixing, combining these mechanical industrial process with the very traditional craft oriented processes that were not necessarily part of the mainstream or historical methods or medium. And also that's the medium that was mostly associating with women artists, and you are male artists working with these techniques. What is your take on that?
That I really love all the ways you're framing these questions and pointing out these relationships between different types of historical practices and different types of processes. And I would love to chat more about that and hear your thoughts and too. But I think there's so many things that are interesting about that. I mean, there are these different kind of properties of creativity, of like soft and flexible properties of fabric, of the transformative, of the supportive nature of textiles, and versus things like steel or metal or wood or concrete, which once you make them they don't really move, and they're more, and you start to think about what are the assumptions behind the hierarchies of value of each of these types of forms. And I think my interest, and let's just keep it short and point out, I would say the priority is that around gender, meaning male, as you said, male. There are male kind of characteristics that are valued in our society of, strength and rigidity and loudness and things like that. And I'm sort of interested in kind of exploring the space between the two, within this perceived binary of rigidity to suppleness, intimacy versus public displays of messaging. And I think so. What I'm doing, and you point out so well, is intervening into the technological process with more of a handcrafted technique. So taking something that was created by a machine, a computer and an industrial loom, and then cutting it with the scissors and sewing into it with soft threads, and by doing that, I hope that I can break down and explore the space between this perceived binary, and actually point out that there are really all kinds of ways of being along that spectrum of not only gender but other binaries that we often like to simplify our world into. But I think with that all being said, and I would love to keep chatting, but I think that we should move into the workshop so that we're not too rushed. If that's
Sure.
okay.
Thank you very much, David, for your answer.
Oh, yes.
Let's
Thank
move
you.
on to the workshop.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know you guys are all like, it's a lot to kind of cram two events into one. And I just really appreciate your attention, your presence, and your participation. And so I'm going to stop sharing, and it's just going to be my face, I guess, or whoever's, and as long as you can hear me. And we are going to do. Let me just get to my guide here. Okay. So, our world building workshop today will last about 45 minutes. Now, this is not required, but I would ask you to turn on your camera and face it toward your face, but not at your work on your tabletop. And the reason why I ask you to leave your camera on is so that we can all be present together, and that I can also see where everybody is, meaning if you are working away, I'll know that you're still working. And if I see you kind of calmly sitting there, I'll get the sense that you're finished. And it's just a way to be more together with each other. You will need 2 to 3 pieces of paper, a writing implement, and scissors. And if you don't have scissors, there's a workaround. The workshop is mostly about leaning into uncertainty, playing, and experimenting. There are no wrong answers and no right way to do it. You won't be judged by me or anyone else here. And I just want to make sure that you guys are all up for this before I start. But essentially, the idea is that I'm going to give you some very basic instructions, but I'm going to give them to you one set at a time. So I'm going to be like, do this, and then everyone's going to do it. And then I'm going to go, is everybody done? Okay, done, do this. And then everyone's going to do it. Then I'm going to see if everyone's done. So it's like I'm going to feed you the instructions like one at a time. And that way you won't really know what or why you're doing what you're doing all the time. It's not like that long or crazy or anything, but just so you know, that's the kind of general method. And does anyone have any questions before we start? Or any concerns? And I really appreciate you participating, and let me know if anything seems off, or if you have any questions or concerns, or if you need, But okay, so to start, we will all take our one piece of paper. I'm going to put this on gallery view so I can see everybody. Okay, so we're going to take our one piece of paper, and we will cut. The idea is to cut the paper into roughly 16 to, I don't really know, I didn't count exactly, but let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I think 16 pieces. So basically what you want to do is fold it in half again, fold it in half again, make the creases so you get it, and then fold it in half one more time till you have this. Basically fold it 4 times, I think. And then once you got it all folded, you're going to unfold it. And then you're going to cut out all the squares. So just cut along the lines. Don't be careful not to cut your fingers. And if you don't have scissors, just do your best at like ripping these into like, maybe crease it more so that you can rip it a little bit. But it doesn't have to be perfect. If you get all your strips, you can line them up and cut them like multiple cuts with one cut if you want. Oh, now I'm going to wait till everyone's finished with that part. And for those of you who don't have your cameras on, I won't really know if you're done or not. So you can either turn your camera on or just, yeah, just do your best to stay with everyone. Okay, let me check the chat. Okay. Is there a specific way to cut the paper? Well, basically, maybe you asked this a while ago, I don't know, but you just want to cut it along, you want to fold it and then cut it along the folds. So you fold it 4 times. Just going to demonstrate again. Once, twice. Just keep, it actually really doesn't matter. Whoever asked Jason, it's just, we just want to get roughly 16 rectangular pieces. If you have 20, that's fine. If you have 12, that's probably not enough, but you probably want at least 16. Okay, so those of you who are already done with your 16, now you're going to take your scissors and you're going to cut off like a corner of each of the pieces, or you can cut off 2 corners, like 1 or 2 cuts per piece, however you want. You could cut like that. So you're making like, you're just basically improvising, cutting out 1 to 2 cuts per square. So here's an example of 1 cut. Everyone looking? That's 1 cut. Here's an example of 2 cuts. So you're just having fun making little shapes out of each of your rectangles. Does anyone have any questions? Again, I'm only able to see those who have your camera. So if you don't have your camera on and you have a question, just put it in the chat because I can see the chat. So you're going to end up with 16 little shapes. As I said, there's no right way or wrong way whatsoever to do any of this. And that's the kind of space that we're trying to get into.
Are these
So even
cuts
though
have to be straight lines?
No, good question. Yeah, I tend to do straight lines. I don't know why, but in this, I think that's a great idea. Do a curve. That's 1 cut. You can also save your offcut pieces. I would recommend letting the offcut pieces fall onto the table too. And maybe think of the offcut pieces just as other pieces too. You can make a circle if you want. It's 1 cut. I'll just wait till you guys all finish that. And if you do have your camera off and you want to turn it on at any time, and that's always preferable. Okay, so just in this isn't norm because we're kind of combining two workshops, two events into one. I'm going to start explaining the next step for those of you who are finished, so that you're not just waiting. And then I'll explain it again in a couple minutes. So the next step in our journey is to build an unusual home out of your squares and your pieces of paper. Arrange and rearrange the paper until you have something that makes sense to you. And I'll say that again now. Using your squares and your pieces of paper you just cut, arrange and make an unusual home out of the paper on your desktop. Your literal desktop, not your computer desktop. Arrange and rearrange until you have something that makes sense to you. Again, it's obvious by now, but no right or wrong way to do this. Somebody asked, like a 3D figure. Well, it could be 3D or it could be 2D. I was sort of thinking of as two-dimensional, like a two-dimensional flat image on the table. But if you want to fold the paper and make it into 3 dimensions, you're, like I said, there's no reason you can't. I'm just doing it to get in the spirit of it. This is a lot of pieces of paper, so if you don't want to use all your paper, you don't have to. All right, so just looking, it looks like most people are still working, which is totally fine. I'm just trying to get a sense. Maybe a couple people are done. And just while we work, I'm intentionally not saying too much because I really want everybody to just be absorbed by their own experience. If we have a little time, we may be able to chat after about this, but it's really not about me or what I'm saying. It's about you and whatever, and giving your full awareness to what you're doing. But let's, that being said, let's try to end this section of constructing in the next couple minutes. If you could just take 1 to 2 minutes more. If you're already finished, just waiting patiently. Great. So at 2:04, I'm going to go to the next part. All right, great. Okay, so someone said, do we add details to it? No, don't add details. This is really just a simple first run effort. No, doesn't need to be detailed, like drawn on, I assume you mean. But you can add details with the paper if that's what you're referring to. We just have 1 more minute though, so you may not have time. And keep in mind that we will not be sharing these images of what we're working on with anyone. So don't worry, no one's, I know you may want to share it, but that's not part of it because we can't see it. Okay, it's 2:04. So the next thing we will do is to get your writing implement, and on the blank piece of paper, write down these 3 questions and answer them. And I'll give you about 6 minutes to answer the 3 questions. The questions are, who lives in this house? The second question, where is this house located? The third question, what are these beings that live in the house interested in? Who lives in this? I'm reading it again. Who lives in this house? Where is the house located? And what are the beings interested in? So for the next 6 to 7 minutes, you will answer those questions. Maybe a paragraph or a couple sentences for each. Maybe you only need 5 minutes. Everyone got that? so let's do until 2:08 or 2:09, and then we'll move on to the next part. Maybe 2:09. I don't want anyone to feel totally cut off. We got 2 minutes. Okay, one more minute to answer those questions. Thank you for all your patients who are already done. And I'm glad we're all sticking together through all this. It's very, we're all using our minds and our creativity at the same time and in the same way. And okay, so just to let you know, this session will run over about 10 minutes in order to have enough time to do everything. But if you have to leave, of course, that's fine. The next, I think the last 10 minutes will be very worthwhile, though. The next step is to, now this part is where if you have a camera on your phone, you may want to use it to document your house, because the next step I will be asking you to rearrange the blocks into something else. So at this time, take a picture of your house if you like. If you'd like to commit it to some sort of archive, or you can just try to remember it with your eyes and your mind, or not. And now we'll be letting go of that image and reconstructing a new image with the same blocks. So you are going to build a transportation device. A transportation device. So that's intentionally left open to any interpretation of what you would like that to be. So just like you built the house, you are now going to build a transportation device. And we're going to do we're going to have to kind of keep it on time constraint. So let's do until 2:17. So 6 to 7 minutes to make your transportation device. So 3 more minutes. Maybe you guys are experts at building now, so it'll be faster, or you never know. Might want to rebuild what you've already built if you're done or not. Seems like everyone's working away. Someone asked, is it okay if the pieces overlap? And the answer is yes. Two more minutes. Okay, looks like some people have finished, some people are finishing, some people are working. Got about 1 more minute. Yes, some of you are already photographing your finished work, which is smart because then you'll have that part done. Okay, so even if you're not done with your thing, just stop where you are, and we are now going to answer some more questions like we did about the house. So the questions are, you might want to write these down, but I will repeat them a couple times. Number 1, where is this device going and why? Number 2, what kind of society lives within its walls? Number 3, what has happened on the journey that has challenged and or enhanced the community within? And number 4, what effect does the device have on the world around it? There's 4 questions. Number 1, where is this device going and why? Two, what kind of society lives within its walls? Three, what has happened on the journey that has challenged or enhanced the community? And number 4, what effect does it have on the world around it? So I'll give you 5 minutes to answer those questions. So at roughly 2:23, we will enter the last part of the activity. Okay, I got one more request to repeat the questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to type them into the chat. If that's okay. I got it all as one little paragraph here. Here are the questions if you missed them. It's for 4 questions or more. Somebody is asking whether whether the answers to these questions can relate to the answers to your last set of questions, and the answer is yes, they can, but they don't have to. But yeah, exactly. Good question. So since we're going over a little bit, we're just going to take 4 minutes. So at 2:24, we will get to the next section and the last section of the activity. Okay, two more minutes. One more minute. Great. Looks like almost everyone's done. And so now that we've done this intensive creative practicing, improvisation, I just want to thank you all for your participation. And before we enter the last activity, which is an opportunity for you to verbally share your story or your answers to your questions that you've written, I would like to just say once again that the virtual exhibition is online. I encourage you to explore a bit more. And also the artist who's here, John Day, also has an exhibition, a virtual exhibition that's beautiful and so meaningful. And I really encourage you to look at that. If you would like to be in touch with me, my Instagram is David B. Smith _. If you have any further questions for me about anything, about this or about the show. And all of that being said, I want to kind of devote the last 10 minutes or so to a sort of concentrated sharing or downloading of each of downloading and uploading of each of our creative journeys. I invite each participant to read or summarize, to save time, the answers to your questions, but don't show the pieces themselves. This is not a time to judge, question, or even comment on anyone's ideas, even your own. Simply to view each other's ideas and to represent them as they are. So in order to try to expedite it, I'm not really sure the best way to go through everyone. We have 25 participants. And I don't know, Heywan, if you have a suggestion, I could just go through the names I see and
First of all, Betty Barbari asked, would you share the Instagram account again? Maybe you can type it on the chat.
Yeah, here it is.
Yeah, here is David's Instagram address. I suggest that maybe those who have a camera on, maybe volunteer, like share. How's that? Like,
well, that's fine, but what about people who want to share that don't have it? So if you turn your camera on, that means you want to share, in other words?
Well, yes, I guess we can just have those who would like to share. Maybe, hopefully, some.
How about how about I just call on your name, and if you want to share, you just share, and if not, just say just don't.
Yeah, that sounds good. Don't call me.
Okay, don't call you.
Yes.
Okay, well, I hope somebody wants to, because wait, I feel like I'm not seeing everybody right now for some reason. Okay, so let's start with
Betty is ready.
I'm ready.
Let's start with Betty. Yeah.
So this whole activity is so interesting to me because I'm with the math department, and so I cut my very exact. I had them in a very similar way, my shapes, and all I kept thinking about was polygons and who lives in the house. They're going to Polygon Place, and so it's so interesting, the answers to my questions, how they are specifically based on my field and just the way that I view things and the way that I cut things. So that when you asked me to do the second activity, I totally decided not to do that. And just to kind of think outside of the box and put them in a way that doesn't have any structure. And then, I it was good for me. It was good for me to be able to do the activity and try not to think in my, structured solution problem solving way that my mind usually
I'm
works.
glad.
So I,
I'm
I
glad.
wanted to share that.
Thank you. Would you like to share your answers, or did you just want to share the that?
Sure. Well, my answers are very like for the first part in my paper house, the extra pieces that were left over, I just used those as pretend. Those were the ones that are living in the house, whatever you want to call them. So those were the beings in my house, and their goal was to kind of reconnect with their pieces since they were in the house where they came from. So that's the idea that I was going with. Whereas the second part with the transportation, I had a more space exploration perspective. So the transportation was going to space to explore, and everything in the place was diverse, and it was going to try to find alternate places for us to live. And it was just a completely different aspect than the first one, which I intended. I intended because I didn't want my math focus to take me over. So thank you.
Oh yes, thank you. Thank you for sharing. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Wouldn't I mean I feel like I don't want to pronounce the people's names wrong, but let me just try it. Alana or Alana, would you like to share?
Yeah, I can share.
Okay.
So my first one with the house was I had a lot of pieces that I did like wavy cuts into, so it made me kind of think of the ocean. And the person in my house is like an old woman who has owned it for 50 years. So yeah, so she's owned this house on the ocean for 50 years, and it's like very rickety. Um, and she just likes to sit there and watch the ocean and like remember her life because she's the last one in her family. She's like very alone, but she's not sad about it. Like she just chooses to think of the happy memories that she has. Um, and then my device was, I guess I kind of had her in mind with that because I said she was ready to die in her house. So then my second device, my device was an ambulance. And I said the society inside it is like a group of EMTs who are like kind of new on the job. Um, and like because the thing that happens on the journey is that one of them gives the person in critical condition like some medicine that they're allergic to. So then now that's a new challenge they have to deal with. Um, and the effect it has on the society is it's like it's supposed to help people. Sorry, it's supposed to help people, but because of the people that are inside it, it kind of ends up hurting people.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. That's really fascinating, and I love hearing your your creative journey. And the I'm realizing for time purposes we are going to have to make a little bit of a change, and I'm only going to start by calling with the people with their cameras on, and if we have time, we'll go to more people. But and obviously, if you really want to share, I'm happy to stay and as long as it takes. So let's go with Eric. Are you interested in sharing? Eric Hagen?
Sure, I can share briefly. So for the first one, I had sort of a mountain home where there was a creature living by himself, and he was pretty content with that, to be kind of by himself. And for the transportation, I sort of went in a different direction, and I imagined like a fruit collector. It was like a group of people that were responsible for going out and collecting sustenance for their kind of neighbors and their friends. So they had to go on a long journey and collect the fruit and bring it back. And on the way back, some of the fruit spoiled, so they had to figure out how to save the rest of the fruit so that they had food, but not cause themselves any harm, and to bring it back to celebration. Originally, this was heralded as part of the society, but now that it's made these journeys so many times, it's just kind of mundane. It's like expected. So that's where I went.
That's great. Thank you so much. And Lena, would you like to share?
Hi. Okay. So I had me and my friends were living in the house. It was in a desert area like Arizona or California where it's warm all the time. It's in a suburban neighborhood, so there's still neighbors, but they're a little far away, so you don't get to talk to as much people. It's just like the people that you're really close to. And we got onto a hover train, so like a future train, and the train has a like a drawing screen or a writing area where you could write or draw on front of it, so you have to like express yourself in a way, and so that gets people to interact with each other and socialize, and that was like the point.
Wow. So great to hear that. Thank you, Lena. John Delolio?
Yeah, I'll go. So I immediately thought Igloo when I did it. So who lives there? I said the Abominable Snowbed. Where is it located? Somewhere cold and snowy, like the Arctic. What are the beings interested in? I said hunting. And the vehicle, I kind of stayed along the same subject there. Where is it going? The Abominable Snowman is driving it on this hunt. What kind of society lives within the walls? I said he's going to a small tribal Arctic community to go hunt. And what happened on the journey that challenged his community. When the members of the tribe see this vehicle approaching, they know to run and hide. And what effect does vehicle have on the world around it? It's a big armored hunting vehicle that emits a lot of greenhouse gases and it sows fear within the community.
Great. Wow. I'm just going to keep moving. Just assume that I'm really appreciative of everybody's sharing. Faith, would you like to share?
Sure. I have 2 trolls living in the house that I built. I did make it 3-dimensional, and this house is on a hillside, and it has a garden that takes up a lot of the time and effort of the 2 trolls that live there. And some of their interests are also the weather and astronomy. And my my transportation device actually has like legs. So it's kind of like this big monstrosity that transports people in the city nearby. And then the trolls are sort of related. They visit the city because they know people that live there, but they don't work there or anything like that. But the purpose of the device primarily is for people in the city to get around, for getting to work and for getting groceries and local things like that. It's not a very good mode of transportation. This city has some issues with pollution, and this doesn't really help that. This particular device, it has a negative effect on air quality and road conditions and traffic. It breaks down a lot, and it's a diverse group of people that utilize it, but they all have this common problem with this mode of transportation, with it breaking down. And so they're often sharing their grief about it with each other. I think that was all of it.
Wow, it's amazing how much nuance is in all of these answers. Thank you. As I said, just if you don't mind, Heywan, if we could just stay on until those who wish to share have had
Sure.
opportunity. Otherwise, feel free to log off and whatever. Tavon, would you like to share?
Yeah, I'll share mine. All right, so the people who lived inside my house was a kingdom of gangster kitties, intergalactic gangster kitties, and the device that they were flying, it was going to intercept an intergalactic convoy that was carrying goods, and the journey that improved the community. They stole many goods along the way, making them richer. The effect that the device has is it brings mass destruction to any society it encounters.
Wow, that's great. I love it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Would Sarah, would you like to share? Are you there? I see your light, but I don't see you. No? Okay. Angela, would you like to share?
Sure. Mine's kind of weird. So when I was just so the residents within my own home are just these pixies that enjoy interior decorating from found washed up items as their home is somewhere within this old abandoned boat deck, we call it. That's just in an urban city, but the deck itself is abandoned. So whatever stuff they find washed up, they'll just use for decorating their own little space. And they feel motivated to find more items as stuff being washed up is for some reason hard to come by out of nowhere. So they decide to go down the bay on their other little sled transportation device to try and catch the train, as there's another bridge nearby inspired by kind of where I live here in Long Beach, like right by the bay where the Long Beach Bridge is. I sometimes walk by down to the little bay area over here for the sunrise. And so their sled unfortunately leaves tracks in the mud so anyone can easily discover them. They're friendly, but they just don't have time for socializing. And the only downside is that their little sled tends to catch a lot of seaweed and kelp, slowing them down. Thank God they don't really care which train they grab or where it's going to. They just want to find somewhere else, as long as there's another bay that they'll find. Abandoned or unabandoned.
It's really cool. Really cool. Thank you. Jessica, would you like to share?
Sure. So my house there was a robot that lived in it. It was located on top of a steep hill surrounded by beautiful landscapes and mushrooms. He lived in the house alone. He was interested in nature and landscapes, and that's why he liked to live alone up there. Then when we changed it, it was a train, and it was taking the robot back to where he belongs with the rest of society, where they were a community which lived selflessly, not knowing of the damage they cause through their use of living, like things like pollution and stuff. And on his journey, he realized that living on his hill, separate from the community, didn't change the world, but rather ignore it. And the effect of the device brings people together, but also a part of it is the problem because of pollution.
Great. Thank you very much. Graciela, would you like to share?
Sure. Hi. The house that I made was the house where I used to live in Peru. My family is there, and what they're interesting is we talk about food, conversation, debate, etc. We have we used to have a lot of conversations. For the transportation device, I created a bus, also from Peru. The society that live with them, it's a third world country society, because upper class people is not going to take a bus. They don't need to take a bus, they have their own cars. The challenge of the community or the society is the lack of resources, because they don't have established buses like here, where it's like a time and it's organized. And what is the effect of this device, which is the bus, on the society or the world around it? It's the effect of anxiety, because they never on time and there's a lot of people, and it's like because of the lack of resources, you know, like not everybody can get into the bus, not everybody can go to their destinations.
Great, great. Thank you so much for sharing.
You're
Well,
welcome.
thank you. We've covered all the people with the cameras, and would anyone like to turn their camera on and share, or so we can see you while you share? Maybe you could type into the chat if you want to share. Okay, well, I just want to go through the list one more time before we end. Actually, let's just say, if anyone wants to share, if you're out there, I can't see you because your cameras are off, type your name into the chat, and we'll share them in the order you type them. So I'll give you like 1 minute. If you'd like to share, type your name into the chat. Not getting anything. Seems that calling on people works better than anything. But I think we should probably wrap it up because we are 15 minutes over. If anyone needs the last minute decision to share, type it in now.
I can share.
Goody, yeah.
It's embarrassing, but who lives in the house? I just wrote my family, husband, Emma, and me. And I said this house is located in an affluent and quiet area in Seoul. They are interested in building home together, eating and sleeping, reading and playing, having play dates, growing together, inviting friends over, and just living life. The device I built is airplane, and it's going to New York. What kind of society lives within the walls? I said democratic capitalist society. I said what has happened on the journey that challenged and or enhanced the community within. I said division between the rich and the poor, but there was a gradual unity between these two classes, two separate classes. The last question I said, what is the effect? The outside world was influenced by what happened inside of the airplane. So more of the balance and unity between class divisions.
Great, thank you for sharing them for everybody. And yeah, I just want to encourage everyone to stay in touch with this this non-judgmental, creative voice that we all have for imagining possibilities, and as we said, for eventually making an effort into transforming our worlds, even in small ways. That's a good place to start. And I hope this gave you a little bit of feeling of confidence in your ability to invent and contribute to our world. And I appreciate you all being here, and feel free to stay in touch. Yeah.
Thank you so much, David, David, and also everyone who participated, and especially those who stayed until the end of the workshop. I think it was personally small practice, I mean, but it was a very interesting, creative practice, definitely. And I was really interested in listening to everyone's answers as well. So thank you, David, leading this incredible workshop. And so yeah, I enjoyed it thoroughly, and I hope everyone did it too. So can we maybe applaud together? Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, so much.
Thank you,
Have a
David.
great day. All the best to all of you. Take care.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Miss-
you.
Bye.
Thank you, Dave.